Today we're going to cover processing die rules where you have more than just pass-fail possibilities. So say you have a situation where the results are on some arbitrary table, or the results are, if you roll more than 5 higher than the DC, then you get some extra bonus. And if you roll more than 5 lower than the DC, you get some extra penalty or something along those lines. More than 2 possibilities. Like, for example, this situation that I have set up here, let's say you're doing an investigation check, and there are a bunch of different items or a bunch of different things that could possibly be detected in the scenario. And each of them have different DCs as to whether or not they're detected. And so you need to know, did I find all of the items? Did I only find, all but 1, all but 2? So again, it's more than just a simple pass-fail. So if I have this step on here, and I roll my perception check, or sorry, my investigation check, let's do a normal roll this time. It says I rolled below 10, right? But if I do it again, this time I'll give myself advantage. Now it processes that I got between 15 and 20, between 10 and 15, and below 10. So any items in the area that you needed less than 10 to detect, I would detect. Also any items between 10 and 15, any items between 5 and 20. But any items in the area that needed more than 20 to detect, those I wouldn't detect. So as you can see, it's looking at more than just I arbitrarily beat a particular number, and that's all there is to it. Now, this is something that is built into Monk's active tile triggers, but it's not something that is built into the tile itself. You actually there are a few macros that are included with Monk's active tiles. So if we go into our compendium and we go down to active tile macros, open that up, we have a couple of macros here for multiple landing die rolls. And we're using this top one here, and we'll take a look at it. As you can see, if a die roll is less than 10, then use this. It says tag, but it's actually a landing. When this was written, the landings used to be called anchors, and that's where that confusion comes from. Then we have another one that if it is equal to or greater than 10, but less than 15, then we'll go to this anchor, or this tag, or this landing label, and so on down the line. Now, these macros, you can't edit them. So you can use it as is, but if you want to edit it, then what you do is copy the macro into your macros area. So you just drag it over, and it appears here. And then you can rename it, you can edit it, you can do whatever you want. So let's say, for example, I wanted to change this one so that it would also do from 20 to 25 and then above 25. So increase the range that it's checking for. Okay, so what I would do is I would copy this line, and then we'll go to the beginning of the line. Okay, and then we just change this final line here to 25. Oops, it's the wrong key. We change this one to 20, and then change this to 25. And then we change the label. And then we also change this label. There we go. We've now changed it. So it'll check for below 10, between 10 and 15, between 15 and 20, between 20 and 25, and then rolls above 25. Okay, so I'll save that. And then we'll take a look at the tile itself. So we're triggering on the token entering. And then we're rolling an investigation check. And the only difference here is we're not giving it a DC. You even put a DC in there, it just ignores it. So it doesn't matter. Although it may confuse players if you put a DC in there, because this rule doesn't have a single DC. So it's better to just leave it out. Public role, you can make that private if you want. All tokens always. If you want it to be sort of a passive check, although I mean it is rolling, but it's just, automatically happens and doesn't show anything. You can turn off the dialogue and you can turn on auto roll, and just anyone who walks into the area, it automatically checks for what they see or what they don't see or whatever. I mean, you can do that if you wanted. And then wait for a short period of time. This is set to 0.3 seconds. And this is just to give it enough time for the roll to finish processing and to give its results before it runs the macro. And then for the macro, you're just selecting what macro you're going to use. So I'm going to select this macro that I just made. No args, run as GM. And then you set up the various landings. So since I made that change, I need to add in another landing. So I'll duplicate this one and I'll rename it to above 25. And then I'll rename this one to, it's anchor dash 20 dash 25. And then I'm going to turn off the stop here. And then I will copy the chat message. And obviously you would insert in here whatever you wanted to happen as a result of the roll. So you roll between 20 and 25. Okay, now the reason why we have it set up where there's a stop on this first landing and then there's no stops on these other landings is so that it will go to whatever it is you rolled and also trigger everything below what you rolled, which is for this particular scenario where you're doing an investigation check. Obviously, if you rolled well enough to find the hidden item that it needed a 25 to find, then you rolled well enough to find all of the items that were easier to find. If you only wanted it, like say, for example, this check was versus a table. And so you're only getting the specific result of that entry on the table and nothing else. Then all of these other landings, you would also make them stop landings so that it would go to the appropriate landing for what they rolled, but then it wouldn't do all the ones under it. It would just do that one. So that would be the difference there. But in this case, we're doing an investigation check, then you get to find everything lower than what you rolled. And that's it. It's not that complicated to set up. I know, some of you are not going to be familiar with working with macros. It's fine. You don't need to understand what the macro is doing. Just make the specific changes that I showed you and don't touch anything else and you should be fine. Oh, one minor thing that I did run into while I was trying to set this up, because I couldn't get this to work. They were discussing it in the Discord and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me check that out. And I set it up and I tried and I tried and I tried and I could not get it to work. And several people duplicated what I did and they could get it to work. We couldn't figure out why for the longest time. And then we figured it out. And under configure settings for Monk's active tiles, Monk, there is a setting here, use core macro execute. And I've run into this before where a particular macro will or won't work, depending on whether or not this checkbox is on or off. So if you're working with a macro that you think should be working and it's not, try toggling this setting. and see if that makes a difference. I don't know what the setting does, but I do know that for some things I've had to turn the setting off, and for some things I've had to turn the setting on. I no idea why. Maybe someone like ProGuard or Monk could explain it to you. I'm sure Monk could. But that is something that I did run into, and it caused me all kinds of frustration. So just something at any time when you're working with Monk's tile triggers, and you're having trouble with a macro, obviously, first make sure the macro, doesn't have any like spelling mistakes in it or an extra space in there or whatever that it shouldn't. But if you're certain that the macro should work, like for example, this macro here, because I used his original unedited one. So obviously there wasn't any mistakes in it. It wasn't working. Check that little setting, and maybe that will make the difference. Hope you guys found this helpful. Have a good one.